you have to remember that it only takes one, right? For most people, you're only looking for one job, and it only takes one person to give you an interview and then to say that you are qualified and that you can get the job. Aloha, folks, and welcome back to Degree Free. We are your hosts, Ryan and Hannah Mariyama. On this podcast, we share fundamentals we've discovered and the mistakes we've made while self-educating, getting work, building businesses, and making money. We'll tell you how to make it happen. No degree needed.
Welcome back, everybody. We are happy to have you back with us on the podcast as always. And if you want more degree free, because why in the world would you not? You are going to run, not walk, over to degreefree.co/newsletter to grab our free weekly newsletter. Ryan and I send this out once a week. It has resources. It has stuff that we think is cool. It has degree free news like apprenticeships, jobs, and companies that are rolling back degree requirements. You are not going to want to miss it. So go on over there and sign up to get that delivered to your inbox once a week.
Awesome. Let's get into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about your biggest problem finding a job.
Oh, yeah.
And that's self-elimination. Now, not everybody has this problem, but a lot of people do.
I think most people do. I think it's safe to say most people do.
And it is the biggest problem. The reason why is because
if you self-eliminate, you're definitely not getting the job.
You're 100% not going to get the job if you don't apply for it.
Yeah.
1000%.
How do we know this? Because they won't know you exist.
Exactly. And so it seems really simple, but after doing this for a while and talking to job seekers and job hopefuls and people that are looking for jobs and trying to transition their careers, this is something that's huge. And specifically what we're talking about with self-elimination, I mean, we're really talking about everything, but one of the biggest things that we see is when it says college degree required.
Yeah, this is where people just need to relearn boldness. And this applies to college graduates as well, who see if you have a bachelor's and you're looking at a job that requires a master's degree, but you could do the job, apply for it anyway.
We call it applying fearlessly. And we say that because everybody's scared, right? Like everybody's scared of rejection.
And it's funny too, because rejection nowadays is just silence. You know, it's not even, it does get discouraging after a while, but it's not like you're going to lose face. You're sending in a job application to a company that you'll probably never cross paths with if they reject you. Who cares? But people get really hung up on it, and they are their hardest critics for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And specifically with the college degree required, one of the things that people start to say is, oh, well, it says college degree required, so I better go get a college degree. And that is literally the last thing that you should do.
Yeah. Because
it is super risky to get a degree. It costs a lot of money up front and for maybe having a benefit at the end.
Yeah. And that's if you're even able to make it all the way through, which most people are not.
So instead of doing that, you could look at the job listing and you could do something that we call how to find a job backwards. And that's its own whole thing.
Basically, you get every skill or requirement on there except the degree, because who cares?
Exactly. Or at least a bunch of them. Right? Mm-hmm. What I always say and what we always say is if you match 50% of the job.
Realistically, though, nowadays, 30% is probably enough to do the job sometimes.
If you match 50% of the job description and you can convince somebody else that you can do the other half of it, or you can learn the other half, then okay, then apply. And then if they don't like you, they'll weed you out in the interview, or they'll weed you out right there. They'll be like, screw this guy. Yeah. And they'll throw your application away just like everybody else's.
Nowadays, and this is something that's come from talking to HR professionals, both some that we're related to and then through doing this podcast and our TikTok and stuff like that, you can just safely assume that the job description is a mess. Safely assume that the job description is not accurate, and it's not up to date, and that it doesn't actually matter. It's just barely follow it when you're self-eliminating, because it's not going to help you. You look at the skills and assume that those skills are probably accurate, because probably historically they are, but the rest of it, you really just got to apply. And don't get too hung up on the description.
With the how to find a job backwards, that is a whole process that we talk about at length in another episode, and you can definitely go back and listen to that episode. We'll link to it, degreefree.co/podcast, and you can find it. Also, this episode is a blog article. We thought that this was so important because it's kind of the basis of a lot of our philosophy, that we kind of wrote a little philosophy how-to guide of applying fearlessly and how to not self-eliminate. So with applying fearlessly, we kind of alluded to it at the beginning, but people are usually afraid of two things: is breaking the rules and then getting rejected.
Yeah.
Right? Like those are the two things that we hear all the time. And with breaking the rules, it's like, I don't want to be a rule breaker. Like, I don't want them to just throw my application away. I don't want to get put in jail or break the law.
Here's the thing about rules, though. Like, and I think that really where we get kind of convoluted is rules and laws. And I know that because our TikTok frequently gets reported for telling people to apply without college degrees to job descriptions that require them. People are under the impression that is illegal. It is both legal and ethical. A lot of people think it's illegal and unethical. They would be wrong on both counts. And that's just asinine, honestly. It's the silliest thing in the world to assume that you are going to incur a consequence by sending in an email, because that's essentially what you're doing. An email of a digital paper that has your name and information on it. Who cares? Again, as I said, the consequence in most cases is silence. That is the worst thing that's going to happen to you.
I would say don't worry about breaking some sort of unwritten rule when applying.
Rules that don't apply to you, that don't matter.
There aren't any rules. Like companies don't care if you have a degree. Like they don't care.
Yeah.
What they care about is whether or not you can bring value and succeed in that role.
Yeah.
That's what they care about. Let's back up for a second and let's say, Ryan, they absolutely care.
They care so much.
They care a lot. All right, perfect. Let's say they care. What's changed?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. You still don't have that job.
Right. And you still won't get it if you sit back and you don't send an email.
Exactly. So either way,
that leaves you
we end at the same place, which is
send it.
Send in your application.
Shoot your shot.
We're kind of laughing here and almost minimizing it.
No, but it's sad, and it's really affected a lot of people at the same time, which it's frustrating because of the amount of people it has kept back from jobs they could have done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we understand that, yes, is it the company's fault and is it the company's problem to deal with now? Definitely.
Yeah.
100%.
And do we know that we're all taught to follow those unwritten rules? Yes, we know, because Ryan and I both grew up in American school systems, so we know.
Exactly. But at this point, especially for you, the job seeker, there's nothing that you can do to make that company take down that requirement.
Yeah, you can't fight the institution. What you can do is apply.
Exactly. And if you apply and you get the job, well, then obviously they didn't care about whether or not you had a college degree.
One step closer to learning that lesson. I would argue that I would bet, and this is just how I feel about this, but from what I've read and what I've seen, I would bet that there are very few, and I'm not talking about doctors, I'm not talking about lawyers, but I'm talking, there are probably very, very few jobs, like, and I mean specific job titles, like at different companies where there has not been at least one person who, for a job that required a degree, that did not have one, that has held that job at some point. Like, and I don't mean in the past, I mean in recent history, like in the last 10 years. I think that that's fair. And I think that it happens way more than we think. And I don't think people report it. So I don't think there's accurate numbers on it. But I do think that you can safely assume that at some point, somebody without a degree held that job.
Absolutely. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about was the rejection part, right? And just overcoming it. And like you said, Hannah, like the worst that can happen nowadays is that you get silence. Like you just don't hear anything back. And silence can be brutal. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm not minimizing that. I'm not saying that it doesn't suck.
Especially extended silence.
Exactly. Like there are people, I think the average unemployment time just came down. I think it was at 29 weeks a few months ago. I think it's like 22 to 26 weeks or something like that, which is like a long time.
And dude, that'll crush you.
That's like that's a half a year.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Especially if you're hearing silence from these applications that you're putting in, that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That being said, that's the worst that can happen.
I guess fear setting, like Tim Ferriss would, the worst thing that could happen would be the recruiter emailing you. I mean, they could email you a rejection, but the worst case scenario would be a recruiter emailing you and be like, how dare you apply to this job without a bachelor's degree in communications? How dare you do that?
If we're doing that exercise, and we can link to fear setting in the show notes for people that don't know about it. If we're doing that exercise, really
they post your application on LinkedIn and they say, look at this person who dared to apply to this job. They're underqualified, blah, blah, blah. Nobody hired them. That's the worst thing that can happen.
Well, no, the worst thing that could happen is that they reach out to your job and they say, oh, well, look at this person. This person is looking for other work. Now your job says, okay, well, screw this person because they're looking for other work, and then they fire you.
Ooh.
Like, that's the worst that can happen.
Okay, you're right. That's
right?
the worst.
Like, that's worse.
And then you lose your job and you can't get another job. Now you're homeless and then you can't pay your car. There we go.
Exactly. That's it.
Right. And your life is over. There
yeah.
we go. Okay.
That reminds me so much. Sorry. I'm going to go on a tangent here. I'm going to tell a story. And that reminds me so much. I was trying to learn how to do a backflip. And I was on the beach with one of my friends, and it's slanted and it's sand, and he's trying to spot me, and I'm just like not committing. I'm not like fully
committing to the flip.
And so he keeps having to like spot me more and more. And he goes, come on, just commit. Like, you just got to commit. Jump back and tuck your legs. He's like, what's the worst that can happen? What? I don't catch you. You hit your head on the ground. You break your neck. You can't walk for the rest of your life. I mean, that's it, right?
Yes, that is right. That is right. So Ryan and I
that was so funny. I
did you break your neck?
Didn't break my neck.
Nice.
I did try.
Did you commit?
I did commit, but I didn't do it.
Oh.
So I don't know.
Wow.
I'm not sure if I just shot myself in the foot by telling you guys that story.
This is a terrible Aesop's fable. I want my money back. Exactly. The hair did not win at the end. Yeah. And I really don't know what lesson I'm supposed to take away from this.
Anyway, definitely.
We're having a lot of fun, guys.
So, yes. Fear setting for these things. I mean, that's the worst thing that could happen, but what's the likelihood of that happening, right? Like, what's the
0.0001%?
What's the likelihood of that happening? Probably pretty low. And with overcoming rejection, what I've found to be very helpful for a lot of people is to know the numbers, right? And we talk about it a lot, and for longtime listeners, you already know this, but it takes 100 applications on average to get one job offer. We like to say that it takes 100 job applications to get one interview. And so that means you're going to get rejected a lot.
A lot.
You're going to be hearing silence a lot.
Or you're not we need someone with different qualifications, blah, blah, blah.
And it sucks. There are different ways that you can handle and deal with rejection. We did a whole episode on it. I'll put the link in the show notes. And if you guys just want to go back on Spotify or whatever you're listening to and look for it, it's there. It's how to deal with rejection. The biggest thing is that you just got to get over it. You've got to keep going, and you got to keep sending those applications in. You have to remember that it only takes one, right? For most people, you're only looking for one job, and it only takes one person to give you an interview and then to say that you are qualified and that you can get the job. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is just the mindset of feeling qualified. You are qualified.
If they hire you, you definitely are.
If you know you can do the job, or like I said, if you know that you can do 50% of the job and you're sure that you can convince somebody else that you can do the other 50,
and
or
you
that
can learn it.
You can convince somebody that you can learn it. Like, you don't have to be sure that you can learn it. You just have to convince somebody that you can learn it.
Yep. As I said to someone on TikTok once, hired is hired.
Exactly. Then you're qualified. Apply anyway.
Yep.
Apply fearlessly. What are they going to do?
Nothing.
Right. And so that seems minuscule, but from talking to so many people.
No, you basically have to unpack your entire mentality about this and then repack it. And you have to lose the shame. It doesn't serve you. It's not going to help you. So ditch it.
One of the things that we hear a lot, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast, is when you're talking about qualifications, a lot of people that listen to this podcast are trying to make career transitions. They're trying to go from one industry into another industry, completely different industry, or they're trying to go from one role and they're trying to get up the next ladder rung on, in the same industry. All right. Well, if that's you, what a lot of people think is like, oh, I'm not qualified, especially the people that are going from one industry to another industry. What they do is they look at their qualifications, they look at their past experience, and they say, well, I'm only a restaurant server, or I only stock shelves at Walmart, and I am not qualified to do this thing in tech. If that's the mindset that you're coming at it from, then yeah, you're not going to get hired. What we're trying to do here in the job application process or in the job search process is we're trying to get this hiring manager to understand how our experience can bring value to their role, to their job, to their department.
And that's your job until they give you the job that you're trying to apply for.
Exactly. By you thinking that you have no skills because you just worked retail, that attitude is not going to help them connect the dots of how you fit into their role.
No, do it for them.
Exactly. If you do it for them and you say, well, I have all this customer service experience, I understand all of these different soft skills, teamwork, communication, I'm detail oriented, whatever it is that you have to say, and whatever stories you have to tell that person,
to show them
that you are qualified, right? Like that's what's going to get you the job. That's what's going to make you make that leap into that different career. So just remember that. It's a simple point, but a lot of people forget it. The last thing that I will say, in the blog article that we write, it's much more thorough than we're going over now. We kind of go over the 3 most common excuses. And so you can find the blog article at degreefree.co/podcast. It'll be in the show notes. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was connecting the dots, kind of diving a little bit deeper there. You have really 2 options if you still haven't got over the degree requirement, quote unquote. And the first is going to be related to what I was just talking about, which is focus on the skills that you have. When you go into the interview, when you're showing your resume, don't focus on the things that you don't have. Focus on the skills and the experience that you do have. Once again, pretty simple stuff. As we always say, it's simple, but not always easy. And so instead of saying, I don't have a college degree, you say, well, I have all of this experience in doing this, and I can bring value to your role by doing this.
Tell them, don't focus on what's not there. Focus on what is there.
For some people, that's still not enough to get over it. Okay.
Fair enough.
That's valid. Sure. The next thing that you're going to do then is you're going to skill up.
Learn stuff.
And that's going to be degree-free pathway number 5.
Learn a skill.
And then if you wanted to, for some people, you could do degree-free pathway number 3, which is earn a license or certification.
Might do both.
Do both of them at the same time if you want. And for those that are confused, the degree-free pathways, go back and listen to that episode. That's kind of the basis of everything that we're going to talk about.
Really useful.
Yeah. And skill up, learn a skill, and then go back and get a job. And that way you don't have that imposter syndrome anymore. You don't have to worry about whether or not you should be there or you shouldn't be there. I mean, many times you are going to still worry about that, especially when you get your first job. But just because you get hired doesn't mean everybody thinks that you need to know everything about that job.
No. And they won't expect you to. There'll be people there ready and willing to help you. And most people are a lot more understanding of beginners than you'd think.
Yeah.
One last thing that I want to hammer home before we wrap this episode up is that companies do not want people with college degrees. Companies want people to do work. And at the end of the day, most of them do not actually care whether or not you have the 4-year degree if you can do the work. That's just the lay of the land. That's just how it is. People are going to get real upset that I said that, but it's just true. And you need to keep that in the back of your mind, because once you realize that and once you start acting in that way, you'll find that a lot of doors open to you once you stop eliminating yourself from the running. And
yeah, that's pretty much it. Like we talked about, there's a lot of resources in this episode, and you can find everything at degreefree.co/podcast, the 5 degree free pathways, the blog article that kind of goes and breaks all of this down for you, how to handle rejection and keep going. There's even an episode that we've done in our podcast about imposter syndrome when you first get into companies. So definitely give those episodes a listen, because they're helpful.
And if you want more degree free, because why would you not? You're going to want to go over to degreefree.co/newsletter to grab the newsletter that Ryan and I send out once a week. degree-free jobs, resources, degree-free news like apprenticeships, companies that are rolling back requirements, and just stuff that we think is cool. So go on and over and grab that.
And if you guys wanted to support the podcast, the best way that you could do that is by giving us a review wherever it is that you get your podcast. That'd be great. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. And if you found this episode useful, share it with your friends. If this could be useful to somebody else, definitely share it with them. Until next time, guys. Aloha.